It's a household name, Frank Green. I think everyone heard of it. I'm pretty sure my wife has got 3 or 4 bottles at home.
We wouldn't have, sold as many water bottles in Australia as there are Australians, right?
What were some hard lessons scaling like a physical product, like in taking that globally?
I think you've got to listen to your customers. Like, to this day, we spend 50,000 hours a year on product development. We are just relentless and obsessed.
We don't have the opportunity to run the harebrained scheme department, as I call it, to come up with ideas like NoWrap.
Let's get into it. So Ben, thanks for jumping on. I really appreciate your time and really good to unpack a few things here. So your business, it's a household name, Frank Green. I think everyone's heard of it. I'm pretty sure my wife has got 3 or 4 bottles at home. Take us back, I guess I was reading on your website, it kind of started back in the 90s for you and you had a bit of a vision, but yeah, if you take us back and give it a bit of a high level, what kind of made you want to build it?
Well, I was someone who was always out in nature as a kid, always out fishing and walking around in the bush and all that kind of thing. And so I've just got this innate love for nature, and everywhere I went, I just saw, single-use plastic just in really kind of just disrupting, being able to see the environment in its kind of pristine. So then, I took that, from a very early age, and I did, and then I started my corporate career, which is wonderful. I've got so many really fond memories of that and the experience I got. And then, you get into your 30s and you start to think to yourself, well, I want to do something better. So I want to be able to be impactful and use, hopefully your brains and your experience for good, not for bad, is in corporate. So then I just, I started it. I started doing a whole heap of deep research around why people didn't use reusable products. And, simply put, it was because they looked horrible and didn't perform how you'd expected. So then I went on a big process, pages and pages of research I did on why people didn't use them, and so wanted to make sure that every single thing, and it was literally a 100-point checklist of all the things that we needed to achieve, and so we didn't start the business until that happened. And people, life's a popularity contest, and people want a beautiful looking reusable product, so it had to deliver on that. And but that's something that that history says we did deliver on it. Otherwise we wouldn't have sold as many water bottles in Australia as there are Australians, right? So yeah, so that's how it all started. It's from passion, but then using my business experience to make sure that I can solve the business need and be 2 standard deviations, I call it, away from our competitors, because it's very noisy out there, and so people have got a lot of competing interests, and so you've got to make sure that you can capture the imagination with a well designed product and a really enviable brand.
Yeah, for sure. And did you get much pushback in the early days, or people just saying that's, pretty crazy idea, single use, that won't work? Or what was the general consensus back then when you were launching it?
Well, back when I started, about 1% of people used a reusable coffee cup at a cafe. They took it in to get refilled. But then, over time and the war and waste from the chaser guys, they did a good job when they put a whole heap of single-use plastic cups in a tram and travelled around Melbourne, and, it was quite impactful at that stage. But, people just said to me that, you've just made a really beautiful keep cup. That's what they said. There was other products on the market at the time, and they just said yours is the most beautiful, keep cup, and it didn't leak and all this kind of thing. So that's what we had to do.
Yeah. And now you guys are pretty much everywhere, or from what I can see, all over. But what were some hard lessons scaling like a physical product, like in taking that globally?
Well, I think you got to listen to your customers. Like, to this day, we spend 50,000 hours. It's increasing, 50,000 hours a year on product development.
Wow.
We are just relentless and obsessed. I think I can say that word. We're obsessed with getting things better. Where, one of our lids, for example, has got 17 changes to it since we launched it. And so, you probably wouldn't recognize it. A consumer wouldn't recognize at least 15 of those. It's the materials you use, the sure hardness of those materials, how it works in AMSR, like, the clicking and everything like that. And just how it works in people's psyche, right? So it's
Yeah.
that deep seated kind of consumer research where we try and listen every single day and really respect that customers have a choice to buy our product over someone else's. So we want to really fight for that and be worthy of the money that they're giving us to make these products and sell them, right? And the
Yeah.
thing is, to start with, a lot of people got put off their reusable journey, being reusable coffee cups or water bottles, because they got given a really bad experience. And imagine, a junior human, gets given this horrendous water bottle and it tastes of plastic and all this kind of thing, and then they've got a drink out of it. They
Yeah.
just want to drink out of the they would want to go and get a single-use water bottle and drink out of that because their experience is horrible. So we have an obligation and a real goal here is about stewardship and making reusable products beautiful and irresistible, so you can't say no to them. And that's something that I'm really proud with the amazing stuff that we have, that everyone feels like that. Like we've got a job to do and we've got to be the best we can.
Yeah, for sure. And as the business grew and as you scaled, you must have had some challenges of your own, particularly in the warehouse and on your own logistics side.
Are you ready? Yeah. Well, one Christmas, it just was, our campaign was so beautiful. I think a product was so beautiful. Everything came together and you're getting 25,000 orders a day, and it just, you think you're going to catch up, but then it keeps accelerating. So, one Christmas, we got all the orders out, but but I'm acknowledging they were late. But, we spent probably over $1 million giving back money to customers where their product was late. We paid them back their freight or something like that. We didn't need to do any of that, but we did it. It was over $1 million that we paid back just to say sorry, because you shouldn't get that from Frank Green. And that was really difficult times. And we just moved into a new site. It was 9 acres in size. It's what the main warehouse, 13,000 square meters. Like, it's a big, big place. And we had hundreds of people working and round the clock, but the popularity of the brand was so phenomenal. It was, just difficult to keep up. And we had to slow down orders and all sorts of things. But we had, it was always really important to be responsible and say, sorry, but not just say sorry, but also, we provided compensation back to our customers, because talk is cheap, right? So I think that was the measure of the brand and what we stand for.
Yeah, customer focus for sure. And what were some of the challenges around plastic or just general waste in your warehouse and when was the kind of tipping point where you're looking at it going, hang on,
Yeah.
we can do something about this?
Yeah, well, when we first started Frank Green, we wrapped out, and all of our competitors still do this to this day. But we put our products in plastic bags to get them here because we didn't want them damaged and we didn't want them, going out with any scratches. It had to be perfect because that's the experience we wanted to give. But then over time we did, years of research and testing to put, different things around our products in the boxes before they came to Australia or into other markets. And we've done that really well now. And there's no plastic in any part of our supply chain except for pallet wrapping, right? And I know we'll probably talk about that a bit later, but yeah, so that's, one thing that we've done, taking plastic out of our entire supply chain now that we have NoWrap, right? And no one can say, no business ever can say that. And, putting that in context, if you have a single-use coffee cup every day that you go to a cafe and buy your coffee, and you do that for an entire year, with the lining that's inside a plastic cup, that will give you about, the 365 of them will give you about a kilogram of plastic, right? But you, me, everyone contributes to 3.5 kilos of plastic wrap when it comes to pallet wrap because of all the, when you go to Woolworths, you go to Coles, whatever, all their stuff in that from their manufacturers to them, from them to the stores, all that kind of thing. We make up for 3.5 kilos of plastic wrap every year. So it's, put another way, plastic wrap is 3.5 times worse than people getting single-use coffee cups. Not that I'm saying we give a single-use coffee cups or water bottle a free hit here, but it's a problem that no one's talking about, right?
Mm.
And the reason why no one's talking about it is because no one's solved it before. And so if you're the CEO of a logistics business, you probably don't say to your staff, "Hey, I need you to solve that problem," because you knew that they couldn't solve it, right? That they, because plastic wrap was the way it was always done. So
Yeah.
and that's the thing, Frank Green as a business is a design business. We sell over 150 products. So out of those 150 products that we've designed over the last 10, 11 years, we've learned a thing or two, and we have a process for going into our business and, listening, thinking, prototyping, engineering, and then we make something. And that's how NoWrap was born. Now, it was our sustainability, working group with logistics saying when we've done all these other amazing things, and the simple things like putting solar on the roof, all that kind of thing, all the things that you would imagine we've done. But then we look out on our warehouse and there's this place in our warehouse from our office, and you can get to look out over the whole of the warehouse, and you just see this plastic wrap, and it made you sick, and we couldn't do it, couldn't fix it. So we just put our attention to it and fixed it. And
Yeah.
you come to our warehouse now, and it's like I've got a calmness about it. You walk into it and you feel like it's progress, as opposed to just seeing this, these pallets wrapped, in plastic.
And why do you reckon it took so long, for someone like yourself to come along and actually think about that issue and then potentially solve it? Like, were people thinking about it before, or was just they've always done it that way, so we'll just keep doing it?
Well, pellet wrap is kind of effective in the sense of, constrains it to the pallet, it, protects some water going on it and all that kind of thing, right? And it was just
Yeah.
people just, that's just the way it was done. And but it didn't need to. And
Yeah.
that's the thing with NoWrap. That's the thing that we're super proud of. It's just that it's so simple. People go, "What? No, how come no?" The thing that we hear more than anything is, "Why didn't I think of that? And why wasn't that done before?" Because it's so simple. It's like,
Yeah.
okay. I would-
And let's talk about NoWrap. So that's your new business that you've recently gone live with, right? Talk us through what is NoWrap, if you had to kind of give a high level overview.
Well, it's the replacement of reusable replacement to single use pallet wrap, so you never need to use it anymore, and it's extinct.
That easy.
Mhm.
Yeah, right. And I mean, it might be obvious to some and not obvious to others, but what are the main issues with the pallet wrap, the traditional pallet wrap that's always been used in warehouses? Like, because it's very cheap, obviously, that'd be one thing as to why people just keep using it. But what's the big issues there with it?
Well, Australia has 100 million tons of plastic wrap, right? And the world has 600 million tons of plastic wrap, right? So that, plastic is oil. We were born with oil in us, but and there's also 500 genuine, not Mickey Mouse, clinical studies that link, plastic as a product and then the chemical makeup of it to ailments and cancer and all sorts of things. But I don't, I don't want to go down that track as he's doomed to say kind of thing, and just want to work on the solution. But it's a big problem. You have to get the resources, you have to make it, you have to transport it, you then have to use it, and then you've got to cut it off, and then you've got to and then you've got to dispose of it, and only 95% of it goes to landfill in Australia because the economics of recycling don't work in Australia, right? So that's the thing. It just all ends up in a big hole, and that can't be great, and microplastics and blah blah blah. So that's one of the reasons why we need to not do it. But moreover, NoWrap is absolutely cheaper. You know, it's got a payback of less than a year. You know, when I was doing M&A, I tell you what, if I took a business case to, you know, my CEO of a payback in less than a year, give me a kiss, right? You know, that never happens. You always, you know, that's what, if you can get your payback in that financial year, wonderful. You know, so it's cheaper, and I can explain through that. It's faster, 45 seconds versus you know, 3 minutes, 3 minutes 30, and you know, we've got videos on our Instagram and a website to show that. You know, it's safer, right? It's a lot easier and safer. You don't have to have, you know, blades, and you don't bending over as much and all that stuff. And then it's definitely better for the environment as well. You know, being cleaner. So it's those things that I think are, you know, on every level, it has something for someone, right? So it is, so it does become irresistible, and you know, we're working through that now, and you know, talking to, you know, some of Australia's biggest companies, and they're trialing it now to put it into their operations.
Incredible. And you guys obviously did a lot of R&D and trials on your own business on Frank Green before the launch. What were some key takeaways that you had, or what surprised you the most once you were actually testing it in a real life scenario?
Well, this said it worked. I think, you know, even I was dubious of it, right? And then, you know, we were doing it in a kind of analog kind of way. And then once we, you know, got our design team, you know, John involved, and we started, you know, 3D printing bits and using bits, and then, you know, the types of Velcro and how it fits into the spine of the corners and everything. And once we started doing that, it just took more life. And then, you know, we're pretty busy with Frank Graham, with, you know, world domination in a sense. And so it had to be, you know, something that we thought we could deliver, as opposed to being a nuisance in a sense to Frank Green. And that was a big consideration. Should we do this? You know, when, you know, hard enough to run one business alone too, but I just, you know, think back and everyone's like, no, if we don't do this, we're going to be kicking ourselves in 5 minutes time, right?
Yeah.
Because
And
it was so, you know, so compelling at every level. It was better.
yeah. And does it fit any kind of shape pallet, or what about mixed SKUs or anything like that? Or is it designed for?
As long as you can put them, you know, so the corners are uniform, it will work. And, you know, the really nice thing about logistics is, you know, everything's per pallet and pallet space, and that's a unit, you know, an economic unit of space. And so people try and optimize that pallet. You don't want to have a pallet with only 20% utilization. So we try and fill out the nearly 1.2 meters either side, right? So that's there's a built-in mechanism to make pallets conform to how NoWrap works. And yeah, there will be some rainbow pallets that it won't work, but we'll just, you know, for that minority, we'll just come up with something. But I don't want that to stop the 90 high 90s that this actually works for.
And I know you mentioned the payback can be less than 12 months, which is very, very fast. But obviously a roll of wrap is, I don't know, the cost probably literally a couple of cents, whatever it is for one roll. But how do you?
No, it's a lot more than that. You know, on a pallet, and, you know, depends on how much you stretch rabbit and how many microns it is. But, you know, anywhere between 400 grams and half a kilo of plastic wrap on every pallet, right? And if you stretch it out, it's 20 meters thereabouts. You know, once you go 1.2 and around, right? 4 point being you go with a couple of wraps, 4 wraps, say, and lots of people do way more than that. You're at 20 meters of pallet wrap. So, you know, plastic, you know, costs a couple of, you know, $3 a kilo, $4 a kilo. So each pallet's costing you well in advance of $1, closer to $2 to wrap a pallet. That's just in the raw materials. It's not a sense. And, you know, what's happened more recently with the oil crisis, all those prices have gone up by another 30%.
And then you've got the time, the time, right? If it's 3 times longer, then you've got to allocate that time for the pick packers and the people on the warehouse actually doing that. So I guess if you kind of multiply that out, your solution does seem like a bit of a no-brainer in that regard. But how realistic do you think it would be to convince an ops or a warehouse manager or a CEO of a logistics business that upfront cost, and to get that payback?
Well, they can rent it from us. They don't have to do that upfront cost. And
Okay.
we're doing this for all the right reasons, and we're not like 50, just over $50 for a kit, right? Anything else out in the market that is 100, and the people want to wrap the pallet in this big bit of canvas and things. That's $150, $180 for doing that, right? And it takes a lot longer to do it. So it's quite, to me, it's quite compelling. You can rent it or buy it. It's up to you, right? And
Yeah.
we most certainly have a system, not dissimilar to Shep, right? Where it's an inventory system for our products, and it also manages all of your compliance and ESG reporting as well, and can manage those transfers in and out. So it's an ESG engine and an inventory management system all in one, and that's something that we've just developed over the last few weeks. We've been developing for many months, but it's ready now, and it's just wonderful. So people can see, by putting in their operation specifics around their labor rates and how much they were paying for pallet wrap. Some people pay lots, some people pay less, depending on the type that they use, right? And so you put all these into the calculator, and from the transfer of the pallets from say Frank Green to David Jones, we know that this is how much we've saved and how we've gone about it, right? So it is very similar to the Shep and Loscombe systems today that are already out there. So people, from my perspective, we're not asking people to do anything different.
Okay. And then on the ESG topic as well, because I'm not fully across it, but I understand there's some new climate disclosure rules and some new regulations coming into place. Can you talk us through? I'd imagine you're probably more across that, but can you talk us through Scope 3 and like what's actually coming for businesses and how that could impact this?
Well, Scope 1 and 2, what's in your supply chain and what you can directly control, and then you get into Scope 3, right, which is all your inputs into making your products and the impact that you have up and downstream, right? So they all need to be collected in terms of CO2 and the different factors that the climate action group give you on that. And so there's formulas for all the inputs in your supply chain that you fill out, and then you come out with ultimately a CO2 impact on the environment. And the cost of carbon's $45 thereabouts a ton. And so, there's a cost to that. And I see that in the future, for all the right reasons, companies won't be able to get any finance from a bank, or, investors won't invest in you unless you can show that you are you are looking after the future of the globe as well. So that's where it's coming. And there's, of course, like when these things come into place, there's a lot of confusion at the moment. But just imagine what NoWrap can do for you when it's probably your, biggest thing that you can control inside your warehouse is have the NoWrap system and take away, if you're wrapping 10,000 pallets, that's 5,000 kilos of thereabouts of plastic that you're avoiding every year. It's huge. It's an as I said before, it's most certainly people just don't talk about it because I don't think it can be fixed, but it can.
Yeah. And you guys, I think, are direct to consumer or online at the moment. Are you going through other channels or other stockists or?
Yeah, we are. So, there's a wholesale part of my business, we're out there at the moment talking, to a whole heap of people. And just in the first week, we had 100 people reach out to all businesses. So we're working through that now and scaling up manufacturing for all of those orders.
Yeah. Okay. And what's your view? I mean, with the big packaging companies, right, that you're essentially kind of taking on, like, do you think that at some point they'll approach you to partner on a solution like this, or are you just kind of going head to head with these guys? Or
it's like people waiting around for a government grant. Like and we're lucky because Frank Green's done okay. So it's not like I'm worried about a government grant or something like this to get the business going. We're just going at a flat gas, right? I think that's the Frank Green DNA too. Be green at something, go at it hard and see what turns up. So that's where I'm at. But I think more of answer your question. I'll absolutely collaborate in this. This is a big problem, and we're going to be better together. So, if one of these big packaging companies, and they're huge, these companies are the size of a planet, right? If they come to me, and some already have, we'll collaborate with them, and maybe on their, they can also retail, no wrap as well. So I'm not saying no to it because this is an industry solution and we're going to be better together.
Yeah, for sure. And you said it's faster, cheaper. I mean, it's pro, but are you getting many or any at all objections or misconceptions potentially from people about NoWrap compared to just pallet wrap?
No, we bring them to our warehouse and we show them, and they talk to the operators that use it, the people that wrap it, and the people that get it down from the pallet rack, and they talk to them. And I think, to start with, it is probably a bit of disbelief that why aren't we already doing this? That's the thing, I think if anything stops us, like there might be a healthy amount of embarrassment because they're not already doing it,
Yeah, right.
So they go,
Yeah.
The changes of cycle, disbelief, is the first one. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're going through that.
And I guess the challenge can be like people have ingrained habits, right? What have you kind of learned around how to get that user adoption on board, or how that change actually happens? Because you've obviously seen it with Frank Green going from coffee cups to single use. But what's your thoughts on that ingrained habits that humans tend to have?
Well, we've got to train them. We've got to break bread with them and go there. Like, we kind of don't have, in NoWrap, we don't have sales reps in a sense, right? We have people that are onboarding specialists, and they go there and they listen and they think, and it is a little bit of like mini consulting on each sale that we would have, so we can tailor it to their needs and talk to them about, different customers will have different things, right? Some people go, oh, can it be cold chain? Yes, it can. It's, blah, blah, blah. Can it be this? And so you've just got to go out and have a cup of coffee with them and take them through it and get them to practice it. And once they've done it, they go, oh, geez, I could do that. And I did pretty well.
Mm. Mm-hmm. And what lessons or what kind of, success stories are you taking over from Frank Green over to NoWrap over the last, 13, 14 years?
Well, I think it's just a belief that, every single day is a challenge, and you just got to get up and dust yourself off and get on with it. I think it's that resilience. I'm really proud to say that Frank Green's a very resilient company. Every day is a school day, and feedback's a gift. I think that's it. You gotta keep open to it all, and you've got to just put the hammer down. Sales are important. You've got to get sales, and you've got to work through it. Otherwise, you don't have the opportunity to run the harebrained scheme department, as I call it, to come up with ideas like NoWrap, for example. And manufacturing in Australia, some would say it's it's on life support at the moment, and we're doing it. Come September, with all the equipment that we've purchased, it'll be lights out at Frank Green. There'll be just, the machines will just be going lights out, producing NoWrap parts and other things that we're manufacturing for the Frank Green business as well. So it's cool to be able to bring manufacturing, clean, green engineering jobs back to Australia, because you can do it. Power's not more expensive in Australia, even though it's expensive, and you just use solar anyway. We've got a whole heap of solar on the roof. Power's not more expensive than China. It runs lights out. So, you don't necessarily need a whole heap of human capital in that process as well. So, yeah, there's no reason why that Australia can't have a renaissance and get back into making sure that we haven't sold the farm.
So NoWrap manufactured here locally in Australia?
Yeah, it's wonderful. And, the sad truth of it is there's been a whole heap of manufacturing business that haven't survived. So, they've had to sell their product at, Gray's auction, or their machines and stuff. And so I picked up a whole heap of them and I'm reusing them. So, once again, my cost of capital's really low, and blah blah blah. To kind of the story writes itself. It's good.
Yeah.
These machines, if you look after them, can last forever. So
Yeah.
we've got them back up and running again.
Incredible. Now, I know you're only a few weeks in terms of the actual official launch, but what's your kind of view of the outlook in the next few years for NoWrap? Like, where do you see this business going?
We're going to manufacture in Australia for the Australian and New Zealand market. And then we will, we're getting tools made now to start manufacturing in the States. So, in our Frank Green business, our Frank Green warehouse in America, we'll also have some molding machines that are doing NoWrap. So there's some synergies there. Also in the UK, and then also in Asia, we're gonna and then in Europe too. You can imagine somewhere like Venlo or somewhere where the massive freight hub in Europe, where we manufacturing there as well. So that's what's going to happen. And I'd like to think that maybe not a household name NoWrap, but it will be a logistics well-known name around the world, and the products will get that they'll get advanced, and there'll be extra things that come out. Like, so we've got the product now that's for internal loads and external loads. Our NoWrap has a vertical strap, loop and lock strap, so you can transport pallets from say Frank Green to David Jones, as I said before. We'll also bring out some technology around, imagine robots actually de-stuffing containers and putting NoWrap on pallets as well. So that's where we will be. There's a heavy investment at the moment in robotics and making things, just even more irresistible, so no one can say, that NoWrap's not the best idea. We kind of say internally, NoWrap is for logistics what the Hills hoist was for households. It's that type of invention because it is so damn simple but effective.
Yeah. And I can see, like, from the chat with you, you kind of just like, you see that this is where the future's heading. Like, it's a no-brainer for you, that this is the future. If you were advising maybe a logistics owner or a CEO, one thing that they should be getting ahead of over the next few years, maybe it's to do with the scope 3 or the ESG side, but where would your advice be to them, for anyone listening? Like, what one shift should they be getting ahead of?
Well, lay a bit of capital trade-off. I'd be, streamlining my operations and using the wonderful technology and robotics that's out there now. So, it's not so you replace humans. It's so humans can do more value-adding activities and the analysis around it. That's where I would be, and I don't think you need to go and spend $1 billion to be able to do that. And it might be just wait a bit too. We're definitely on a precipice of what Musk is doing, and all those other technologies are out there. I think in the next couple of years they'll become very economical. Like robots today, depends on what brand, but they're getting under 100 grand US. But they have been up over 300, 400. So in the future, they'll give you a payback of less than a year as well. And I think as soon as you can get them to be less than 100 under a year, payback, you kind of get on with it. Yeah. And obviously, of course, I want everyone to be using NoWrap and the technologies that we come out with that as well.
For sure. And for people listening, like, what's the first step if they're interested in NoWrap and this has piqued their interest? What's the first step? Where should they go and what do they do?
Go straight to nowrap.com.au or reach out via our contact us form at hello@nowrap.com.au, and then we'll get back to you, and we're gonna come and see you. That's probably the first thing we're going to do. We'll bring out kits and we will sit down with you and go through it. This is not about here's this, and go fend for yourself. It is a very concierge, bespoke service, particularly in the first instance, because we're learning valuable information and building information so we can make the implementation easier for others.
And I'd imagine you guys would be iterating constantly based on user feedback and things like that as well, right?
There already is a pipeline of improvements that we're making to the product, and you actually don't need to make them, but we're going to make them anyway, right? Perception's really important. So all those things will come out, and you know, it's just like iPhone, right? iPhone version 1, we're up to 18 now. We will get better, and we need to. It needs to become so irresistible. And if you're not using NoWrap, it's not on you, it's on us, because we haven't made it irresistible.
Well said. Well said. Ben, is there anything else that you wanted to cover off about NoWrap? Or?
That's it. Yep. You'll be set by now.
No, good stuff. It's really, really interesting. It's a topic that, look, I certainly didn't put too much thought behind it, but having this chat has been very interesting, and I think it's certainly going to be at the forefront of a lot of logistics leaders' minds. You know, especially as we're all heading to sustainability and working towards a better and safer climate as well. So, all the best with NoWrap, and yeah, look forward to seeing your progress.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Sam.
Awesome. Thanks, Ben. Cheers.